Tom, hello.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Perfect.
Okay.
Lovely.
Did you turn on your interpretation on your computer on the Zoom?
Did I turn on my interpretation on the Zoom? I did not. No. What? Do I need to be? I need to interpret back.
Interpreter is in the Zoom. You need to activate it. It is in down sound panel of the Zoom, right? For sharing, is Globus. Can you see Globus? In the Zoom. In the Zoom. Downside panel, Globus, with interpretation. Okay.
Hang on. So
can be button more with
more,
three dots, more and interpretation. Yes.
Okay, so under more, I've got record, disable, show names of annotators, hide video panel, hide floating meeting controls, optimize share. No, there's nothing in there saying interpretation. Hold on 1 second.
Just for a second, close the demonstration. Close sharing.
Stop sharing.
Stop sharing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Again, can you see?
Interpretation. Yeah, I can see it. Yeah. And then what do I put on? Russian or English?
English, of course.
English. Yeah. Okay.
For you it's English. Okay. Let's test. Slava, попробуем.
Okay.
Can you hear interpreter?
Yeah.
Slava?
You sound great.
Все, слышит. Okay, you can hear interpreter. Tom, right?
Okay.
Tom, did you hear interpreter?
I did. You've now gone very quiet.
Sorry. That's no matter. I'm turning off. Have a good work. Have a good work.
Thank you.
Good luck.
And if I start sharing my screen again.
Добрый день, Том. Добрый день, дорогие слушатели и зрители. Большое спасибо тем, кто пришел в реальности. Надеемся, еще кто-то к нам присоединился онлайн. Как видите, это сплошная импровизация, поэтому продолжаем. Представляю петербургский издательский дом «Поляндрия», в котором меньше года назад появилась взрослая редакция импринт «Поляндрия No Age» вне возраста. Редакция бесстрашная, не боящаяся сложных тем. И мы ужасно рады и горды представить книги современного британского писателя Тома Поллока. Вы с ним уже немножко познакомились, когда мы сейчас тестировали связь. Познакомьтесь, пожалуйста, с его книгами. Пока у нас вышло 2 книги. Первая была «Heartstream Поток эмоций», вторая «Белый кролик, красный волк». А сейчас я хотела бы передать слово Ольге Лишиной, московскому журналисту и блогеру, которая заготовила огромное количество интересных вопросов для Тома, изучив подробнейшим образом его творчество и полюбив его. А еще мы обязательно хотим послушать Тома, который расскажет о себе, о своих книгах и о своих увлечениях, потому что, насколько я знаю, они очень-очень интересные.
Спасибо. Так, добрый день, дорогие друзья. У нас довольно будет сложная технически беседа, поскольку переводчик-синхронист будет переводить Тому то, что я говорю на русском языке, Том будет отвечать на английском, потом нам будут это перевода. И поскольку мне сказали, что камера там, но я прям на секундочку посмотрю на Тома, потому что очень приятно его видеть хотя бы так. И дальше я постараюсь смотреть в камеру.
Hi.
Добрый день. Наверное, сначала Том расскажет сам о себе, а потом я забросаю его вопросами. Да?
Okay. Thank you very much. Yeah, so hi everyone. I'm Tom Pollock, and I'm delighted that both White Rabbit, Red Wolf and Heartstream have been so brilliantly brought to Russia by Oleg and Yulia and the team at Polyandria, and I'm honored to have been invited to talk to you about them now. At first, these 2 stories, one about murder and mathematics and spies, and one about tech and social media and obsessive fans who make spies seem like amateurs, both in their investigative skills and their levels of paranoia, they would seem very different. But I hope over the course of the next 10 minutes or so to show you how, at heart, what they really are is all about intimacy. and how books, that most ancient and yet most marvelous technology, can accomplish what really ought to be impossible, which is to allow us to experience the world through another human being's eyes. So let's talk about White Rabbit, Red Wolf first. So I'm just going to quickly show you the cover for that because I think it's great. So hopefully you can see that come up now. So yeah, this is the beautiful cover for White Rabbit, Red Wolf. That is the story of Peter Blankman. He is 17 years old. He's a mathematical prodigy, and he suffers from a severe and debilitating panic disorder. Sorry, one sec. So Pete finds maths, the certainty that whatever else happens, 2 + 2 = 4 is a comfort. And he gets through his days with the support of his mother and his loving, protective, and when necessary, spectacularly violent twin sister, Belle. Now, Pete's mum is a government research scientist. She's the best in her field, and she is all set to receive an award from the Prime Minister for her work. It's a gala event. Silver cutlery and white tablecloths, elegant dresses and fancy suits. They've taken over the main hall of the Natural History Museum in London for it. And it's taken. Now, right then, just as his mum's about to receive her award, Pete feels an attack coming on, a panic attack, and he's been dreading this. He sort of had a sense it was coming, but after everything his mum has done for him, like he really doesn't want to take her big day and make it all about him. But nevertheless, here comes that creeping horror, that feeling of frost forming in his veins, that undeniable compulsion to flee, and he can't help it. He runs out of the hall. Now, sprinting down museum hallways, drowning in terror, he can barely, but he can just about hear his mother calling for him. And then he realizes she's not calling for him. She's calling for help. With a superhuman effort, he manages to wrestle himself far enough out of his attack to turn around. But when he rounds a corner, he finds her no longer calling for him, but bleeding out on the museum floor. She's not dead, but not far off. And when the paramedics come, they load her not into an ambulance, but into an unmarked van. Is she being rescued or kidnapped? And why is Belle, Pete's sister, his rock, nowhere to be found? And so Pete has to overcome his fear and use his phenomenal analytical powers to solve the mystery of who's attacking his family and what it is that his mother really does for the government, and ultimately the mystery of his own past. Now, one of the most commonly asked questions that novelists get is, where do we get our ideas from? But for me, the source of the idea is almost beside the point. It's a bit like a meal. The ingredients are important, but the recipe is the thing. It's the selection and combination of ideas that makes a good story. The story is 80 to 100,000 words, but it's also a whole world, lives, loves, adventures. And a single idea, however powerful, it's not really enough to fuel a novel. But if you get 3 or 4 ideas together, and those ideas are just the right shape, and you bring them together in just the right way, the sparks that they strike off each other, that might just kindle something magical. Now, there are 3 ideas or themes at the heart of White Rabbit, Red Wolf, and those are espionage and mathematics and fear. Now, I've always wanted to write a spy novel. I grew up on the Carré, and the very idea of a clandestine service that invites you, I think, if you're a writer, to give your own take, to fill in the gaps, the hidden gaps, with your own imagination. So as one member of 57, which is when Pete expresses his astonishment that 57 and not the vaunted MI6 are his country's true hidden protectors, well, either have a secret service or don't. But if you do, then they should be bloody well secret, not holed up in some gaudy Lego fortress on the south bank of the Thames. As for mathematics, why make Pete a maths prodigy? Well, I was always fascinated by maths. It's the language of the universe, the music of the universe, the bones of nature. Who could not be excited by that? I was desperate to be good at it. There was only one problem. Maths is hard. And I sucked at it. And to that extent, Pete is a wish fulfillment character for me, and hopefully for the reader too. Hopefully you'll agree that it's cool to spend some time in the head of a genius. And as for the last theme, fear, panic, why did I write a character with a mental health condition? That's the simplest of the lot. The reason for that, rather, is the simplest of the lot. It's because I have a mental health condition. Now, so do you all, by the way. Just as with your lungs or your kneecaps, the health of your mind can occupy a whole spectrum of conditions, from pristine and new when you're born to, well, works fine, but has kind of been a bit battered by life, to verging on total collapse and then back again. And it may well do at various points in your life. Now, my mental illnesses have been variously diagnosed as depression, anxiety, bulimia, and obsessive compulsive disorder. But when you get right down to it, those are all just aspects of my brain. Now, the ongoing and necessary conversation around representation in the media often centers on the critical value of that's obtained by readers being from all backgrounds, especially young ones, being able to see themselves in stories. That need is, if anything, even more acute when it comes to representations of mental health, and that's for one specific reason. It's the nature of mental illness to isolate you, to trap you in this few square inches of your own skull, to make you feel like you're a freak, like you're the only one like that, even though statistically 1 in 4 people will experience a mental illness at some point in a given year. It's not necessarily a big deal, although it may be. It's a thing that people keep secret. And so, unlike many other aspects of diversity, not only can you not see it in stories, you often can't see it around you either, even though it is absolutely there. So that's one reason I was decided to be open about mine. And when White Rabbit, Red Wolf was released here in the UK, I gave media interviews about it. One of those interviews with the BBC became the most viewed thing on the BBC website within a few hours of it going live. In the wake of that interview, I received a deluge of messages on Twitter and Facebook and my website from other people, from other young men in particular, who had similar experiences to me, who had been keeping them secret out of shame, and now were telling me, a total stranger, something they hadn't told their closest friends. And that experience, that was the genesis of Heartstream. Heartstream is the story of Amy Becker. She's a social media star on a futuristic app that lets you share your emotions and your experiences directly with your audience. If you haven't seen it, I strongly suggest that you check out Polyandria's trailer for Heartstream on their Instagram page. It really captures the feel of the book. Now, most of the big names on Heartstream are like Instagram influencers are today. They sell access to the experience of their privileged lives. Check out how great it feels to have my rock hard apps, that kind of thing. But Amy's different. She broadcasts out her experience of the final days of her mother dying of cancer. It was like the realest, rawest reality TV imaginable. And it struck a chord, and it netted her millions of fans. The book opens with those fans descending on her mother's funeral. After all, weren't they grieving along with Amy? Don't they have a right to be there, to closure? Now that leads to a massive argument with her family, who feel like they've turned that solemn event into a circus. And so Amy winds up having to travel home to the wake in a separate taxi from her brother and her father. Now, thanks to a quirk of traffic, she gets home first. And there she finds one more of her fans waiting for her. This fan, Holly, has rigged her family home with explosives. Primed as soon as Amy walks through the door, she has a score to settle and a story to tell. Now, I spend way too much time on YouTube. Now, one day I fell down a well of videos made by the famous American YA writer John Green. And after the 8th or 9th of them, I caught myself thinking, you know, it's a shame I've never met John Green, because I bet we'd be really good friends. Which is insane, right? Because I'd watched less than an hour of tape of him at that point. Vlogbrothers vids are only 4 minutes long. I didn't know John Green at all. I still don't. And he sure as hell didn't know me. But somehow I felt like I did. When you think about it, isn't that the foundation of all social media celebrity? Aren't all YouTubers talking to camera, the ones who are talking to camera about their days and their makeup tips, and all the Twitch streamers chatting idly to you while you watch them blow stuff up on Call of Duty? What are they mimicking for intimacy? What are they selling? Because all online eyeballs are currency. If not, what are they selling if not a low overhead, zero risk synthetic friendship? Someone to look you in the eye and chat and banter and laugh with you, all without any possibility of rejection, without the need to worry about your looks or your clothes, all of which is even more in demand now in the time of COVID when we're all stuck in our houses. After my experience with the BBC interview, I was struck by how social media distends the geometry of our identities, how it reduces us to a few relevant coordinates in some conceptual space of personality, and so throws together people who couldn't be more different except for that one specific thing that the algorithm finds. And how we can come to believe that those people, that they're like us, that they're our tribe, they're our people, that therefore we come to have an affinity for them. But then what happens when some other aspect of their lives then intrudes and then shatters that illusion that they're our people, that they're like us? How hard will we fight to retain that illusion? And how betrayed and how vicious will we become when that illusion is finally ripped away? One of the threads in Heartstream revolves around a fictional band called The Everlasting. A subset of their fans, fiercely and falsely, believes that two of the band are secretly in love with each other. This is not so subtly based on a conspiracy theory that you might be aware of, that two members of British boy band One Direction were similarly romantically involved. And that's a conspiracy theory that when one of those members of One Direction had a baby with his girlfriend, led somewhat hilariously to an explosion of conspiracy theories that the pregnancy was a fake, that the baby was a doll, and then later, and this was my favorite, when video of the baby surfaced, that the baby was an actor. Rather less hilariously low, it also led to savage abuse of the mother of the baby online, and also of her family. Now, that behavior is heartbreaking and indefensible, but when you think about it, it's hardly surprising. That conspiracy theory, in this case, that those two members of the band were together, that formed the basis of the community of the people who believed in it. That was the one thing that the algorithm had used to bring them together. It was the foundation of their jokes, their friendships. It's what gave them status. It was what bound them together and structured in many ways their lives. That's far, far too much to even think about giving up. You could even argue it's rational from the point of view of their psychological comfort and self-interest to dig in, to reject and despise and try to destroy any evidence that contradicted the theory. Because in threatening the theory, like that evidence threatens them. And more, like all of our social media structured lives seem to be going this way. Now, I don't know what the way out of that is, but maybe it would be a start to get some practice in learning to see and accept each other as we really are, in all our messiness and complexity, all the parts of each other we like, but also the parts that we don't, rather than having the algorithm deliver up to us only the worst aspects of our enemies and demanding that we only either perceive or accept total blamelessness from our friends. So maybe that's why in these stories of a brilliant but splintered mind and this other story of the new technology of intimacy, I turned to one of the oldest technologies we have, ancient but still unrivaled at putting us behind the eyes of other people, so that rather seeing each other in strings of tweets and heavily filtered selfies, we learn again to read each other as we might read novels, far too complex to be contained by a single idea. So yeah, thanks very much. And I hope that was interesting. And yeah, like I think if we want to talk about some questions now, that would be great.
Спасибо большое, Том. Thank you very much. Это, в общем, мой максимум. На самом деле, спасибо большое. И вопросов очень много. Я надеюсь, что нам хватит времени.
Okay. I hope I've left you enough time.
Я начну с, наверное, самой сложной темы. И я бы хотела поговорить вот на тему личных вопросов, которые вы в своих книжках так смело и откровенно поднимаете. Я прочитала несколько ваших интервью. Спасибо вам большое за вашу откровенность. Я была поражена, потому что в России, например, тоже есть стереотип, что настоящий мужчина — это тот, кто может много съесть и много выпить. Ну, то есть это такой богатырь. Оказалось, что в Англии то же самое. Правильно я поняла?
Yeah, broadly, we have a drinking culture. We have an eating culture. It's, in a way, I think a lot of it is down to people like to watch other people indulge in excess. It makes them feel better about when they do it. And so you can kind of goad each other almost into this spiral of always eating more, drinking more, eating more, drinking more, and to the point of suffering. And then it's almost like you're enduring the suffering, but like that is then its own kind of special kind of self-flagellating cycle. So yeah, and I think culturally it's the same, or at least pretty similar.
Потому что то, что я читала про ваш опыт булимии, да, то есть когда человек много ест, а друзья воспринимают это как фан, что это весело, это забавно. И я задумалась, как много вокруг нас стереотипов, да, немножко тяжеловато, когда я сама себя слышу, как много вокруг нас стереотипов, которые мешают не только нам самим, но и мешают нашим близким людям. Да, и, наверное, очень здорово, что вы так откровенны. Но вот сейчас очень популярны дискуссии, может ли автор писать о том, к чему он не имеет отношения. Да, может ли автор писать о людях с кожей другого цвета, о людях с другим культурным опытом. Я не спрашиваю про шпионские линии, но вы написали в Heartstream. В основном вы пишете про девушек. Вам было легко, сложно?
Yep. Well, there's a word for writing outside your own experience, and it's fiction. If I was confined to writing in my own experience, I'd be writing autobiography, right? I do think there are meaningful questions about to what extent you have access to the relevant experience that would necessarily inform your ability to tell a certain story. But I don't think that, to be honest, I don't think girls are that different to boys, like when you get right down to it, or if they are, then the range of different personalities have such a huge overlap in the middle that you can pretty much write a character that's their own fully fleshed out, fully realized three-dimensional person, and then switch the gender right at the end if you want to, and like just change all the pronouns, and that character will read, depending on the story, may well read perfectly believable on the page. The key thing, I think, is always to make sure that you get where there are specific details that you get the research right. So, for example, one of the things that happens in Heartstream is one of the characters has a baby and basically has a baby on page. Like I describe her going into labor, I describe her experience of the labor, I describe how she feels when the baby emerges. It will hopefully not come as a shock to anyone there that has never happened to me. However, it has happened to my sister, and I was able to ask her many questions, some of which were potentially quite uncomfortable and quite graphic, about what that is like. And then I basically just took all of those details and put them straight in the book. So I think a combination of where there are gender-specific details or sex-specific details or culture-specific details or religion-specific details, if you're writing somebody of a different religion, you have to get them right. But equally, that it's very important that your character is more than the sum of the boxes that they would tick on a passport application. People are more than just their demographics. And so the most salient or significant or important things are likely to be universal.
Здорово, спасибо большое. Вы сказали о сестре. Я восхищена в ваших книгах мамами. Моя любимая мама в Heartstream, которая говорит журналисту, что если он не отстанет от ее дочери, она его уложит. И говорит: вы думаете, вы сильный мужчина, я слабая тетенька, но я вас уложу, потому что я защищаю своего ребенка, а вы просто хотите сделать желтый материал. Это восхитительно. У вас близкие отношения с сестрой? Вы близки с семьей? Расскажите немножко?
Yeah. So it's interesting, right? So I've been told, my books are kind of full of problematic mother figures. So if you've read, anyone who's read White Rabbit, Red Wolf, the mother in that is both, I think she's a very fun character and a very attractive character. She's very powerful. She's very smart. She's also quite scary in lots of ways. And the same is true of not the mother you're talking about, but a different mother in Heartstream. And indeed, in my there's kind of cast over my life, like the size of that role in it. I think as she does for most people. When I'm looking for like dramatic things to happen in books and like kind of axes of tension and ways to make books gripping and powerful, I go looking for like the most potent betrayals, the most significant, intense.
Комьюнити Talk Life, социальной сети, как это назвать, приложение. Может быть, расскажете немножко нам поподробнее, что это за приложение?
Sure. I would love to. So Talk Life is a really great invention by a couple of Australian entrepreneurs come inventors. What it is, it's essentially people who have anxiety, who have eating disorders, who may be feeling suicidal. And it allows them to find a kind of network of people who have similar experiences that they can reach out to and talk to. And I think that's very powerful for a number of reasons. There's lots of things about it that I like, and there's lots of reasons that I wanted to be associated with it. One is that, as I think I mentioned when I was talking about Heartstream, I feel like so much of our online presence now tends to be so curated that you are you feel under so much pressure to present yourself in a particular way as being having your life be perfect, right? It's perfectly lit, it's perfectly posed. Everyone's doing that Instagram pose where like they turn 3/4 side on and then like come up 1 foot up on their toe, and in order to like best show off whatever. Everything's got the perfect downlighting and everyone's going on fabulous holidays and being on yachts and whatever. And it can really discourage people from being open and from presenting stuff that's real. And so having this bespoke space where that's what it's for, I think is very powerful. Also, it gives you control over exactly how you want to engage and how much you want to engage. So you can do it over mostly people tweet it, like it's a bit like Twitter, right? Like people just post and you can follow the feed, and that gives kind of just puts a little bit of distance that means that you don't have to kind of do it face to face the way that you might not feel comfortable doing, and it gives you an outlet. And I think the thing that you have to, well, certainly in my country, I don't know what statistics are in Russia, but in my country, the leading cause of death for men under 40 is suicide. People take their own lives, and so this is a really but the statistics kind of shift the probability of that happening for someone who has suicidal thoughts drops really dramatically if they have just talked to one person about it beforehand, and then have been encouraged there to seek appropriate resources to get help, to talk to doctors or to a counsellor or whatever else it might be, and that makes this kind of a really important health tool as well as a really important social tool. So for any young person, I think anywhere in the world, certainly that the app is available, can download it on their phone and just have it there as an outlet, as a pressure vent, and also as a way to really come to feel and to understand on a deep level that they're not alone with this.
Спасибо. Я, кстати, скачала приложение. Действительно, можно зайти, написать, найти какую-то поддержку. Так что спасибо большое, что такое придумали. Совершенно ужасно, конечно, звучит.
I didn't come up with that.
О!
It wasn't my idea. I'm an ambassador for them. Basically, they came up with it. They invited me because I think they read some of my books and they were they felt like kind of some of the themes I touched on would be a good match, and so that basically just involved me. All I do is I write and I go into schools and I give presentations and I talk to people about it and I kind of point people towards it. I didn't code it at all.
А вы говорили, к слову, о скромности Тома, вы говорили, что после некоторых интервью был всплеск обратной связи, что в Твиттере подписывались, много молодых людей писали просто на сайт, в личку. Вам не хочется это развивать? Вы не любите блогеров, вы не хотите быть блогером, вы не хотите больше... Как вы говорите, показывать пресс. И вот я на яхте. Вам это не близко?
Yeah, no, I mean, it is, for me, it's a means to an end. I write fiction because I like stories. I like inhabiting stories. I enjoy reading and I enjoy writing. For me, they're two sides of the same coin. I love sharing that experience with readers, so I'm very gratified and very grateful to have people read my books and enjoy them and then get back in touch with me. And then equally, when I do stuff like if I give interviews and people then want to connect with me about mental health stuff, I'm happy to do it. But I've got a lot of affection for bloggers and a lot of respect and admiration for what they do and for social media kind of personalities in general, whether it's video bloggers or text bloggers or people who have really great Twitter streams. But it's not, I guess it's just not my medium. Like it's not something that I'm really good at developing. And partly, I don't think I can produce at the volume that blogs seem to require you to do if you're going to update regularly.
Ясно, спасибо большое. Но у Тома есть Твиттер и Инстаграм, и у него там есть фотопресса.
I do, yeah.
Я хотела спросить вот еще о чем. Я бы сказала, что в России сейчас бум школ литературного мастерства и различных курсов писательских. У нас очень многие стали учиться писать, креатив-райтингу, брать уроки у каких-то писателей или учителей литературы. Как вы к этому относитесь? Учились ли вы где-то именно писательству? Или вы учились чему-то другому? Про математику мы поняли. Расскажите, пожалуйста.
My degree is, so I have two degrees. I have one degree in economics and philosophy. And that was my first master's degree. And then I do have a master's degree in creative writing as well. However, I would not say that was really in any way helpful or important to me in actually learning how to write a book, finish a book, or get a book to a place where it was kind of ready to be read and published and sold. I think really the only only two things that you need to do if you want to write are read and write. That's it. You got to read widely because, to my mind at least, the mind is a synthesis engine. You take in ideas from all sorts of places, and you take in stylistic techniques. You'll kind of absorb it necessarily, even without reading it, and also, even without realizing it, and also because you need to read widely in order to understand, to learn what it is that you like, and to develop your voice and develop your tastes, and then you practice like anything else. You just practice, and through that you will come to refine and develop your style. Now, to the extent that if you study, that can create time and space, and it can be like a commitment mechanism where you've blocked out like a year where this is what you're going to do. That can be a really good way to actually get some words done, but it's not required, I would have said. So my favorite, so the writers that I've learned the most from are probably, so there's an English YA writer or children's writer called Frances Harding, who is probably one of my two favorite living writers. She writes these, she's like a kind of madcap modern mix between kind of Lewis Carroll and Roald Dahl. She's very psychedelic and very inventive, and like the world she creates are very weird, and I love that. Then there's an English science fiction writer called China Miéville, who I've drawn more than just the inspiration for my haircut from. That's a deep cut for anyone who knows China. But he writes kind of this baroque steampunk kind of science fictional world with people who are like remade and kind of have kind of bits of machine grafted onto them and cactus people, and it's very, very inventive. I try to learn a bit from everyone I write, everyone I read. So Le Carré for me is a great kind of illustrator of the subtlety of kind of world building in a non-science fictional context. So I love if you've ever read Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy or Spy Came In From the Cold, for stuff like that. What's great about the way that he does that is that he does so much with names, about like the kind of the words and linguistics and the names and the culture that come across there is really, really terrific. And there's another much older English children's writer called Alan Garner, whose books, The Weird Stoner of Brisingamen and The Moon of Gomrath, they were books that very much got me excited about writing about hidden things. So I guess those would be my principal kind of, if I think about who are my influences, the answer is, the kind of banal answer is everything I ever read influences me in some way. But if I reach back to the ones that feel really important, it's probably those, plus Ursula Le Guin, and to some extent David Armand as well.
Спасибо большое. Мы потом запишем, всех выпишем. Хардинг и Ле Карре точно переведены на русский. Ну, и Ле Гуин, понятное дело. Здорово. И мне так приятно слышать, как вы говорите, что вы у всех учитесь. Том, а вы, когда начинали писать свои книги, вы сразу думали о какой-то возрастной адресации? Или вы вообще не задумывались об этом? Или вы, как вы представляете? Вы думаете о читателе или вы думаете о себе, когда пишете? Как вы его представляете, сколько ему лет? Вот Поляндрия, у них вся серия называется No Age. Да? Как вот это для вас?
So for me, I don't think that you need to be a teenager to read a book about a teenager any more than you need to be a serial killer to read a crime novel. People are interesting, and other people are probably, I find personally, other people more interesting than I find myself, and the ways in which they're different, more different than me, that's often the ways in which they are most interesting. When I'm writing, the metaphor that I use is that reading and writing for me are very similar experiences. On both of them, I'm on a train. The difference is that when I'm reading, the track was laid by somebody else. When I'm writing, I'm having to lay the track down in front of me as I proceed through the experience of living the story. So when I'm writing, I'm not really thinking about the reader. It's not like I'm shaping a product for a customer. It's more like I am enjoying myself. I'm playing a game with myself. I am having fun and being immersed in the story as I create it, and then also like being immersed in solving certain problems and constructing certain things just so it works aesthetically and from a plot point of view for me. But really, it is primarily about my own experience, because I can't legislate how anyone else is going to read it. I don't have access to other people's minds directly, so I just had to rely on my own as a model for it.
Спасибо, это очень интересно. Здорово. Скажите, Том, как повлияла на вас пандемия? Вы писали больше, писали меньше? Как вы были? С кем? Как для вас это было? Сложно? Чем вы занимались?
The pandemic has been interesting, actually. So on the one hand, I've actually written more, I think, during the pandemic, probably because I have no social life at the moment. So all the time that I would otherwise be spending with my friends or with my family gets kind of filled up either watching Netflix or writing or reading. So I'm getting a lot more of that done than I think I probably was immediately prior to the pandemic. In terms of has it been difficult, I think it's been distracting, certainly. I felt a certain amount of, I've caught myself a certain amount of time sort of collapsing into kind of the doom loop of kind of going through the news and going, that sounds bad. That also sounds bad. There's a lot of hospitals, there's a lot of ambulances, everything sounds terrible. But at the moment I'm writing a fantasy novel,
Мы слышим, но у нас да, зависло лицо, которое не двигается на экране, совершенно верно. И слышат только те, кто не говорят по-английски. Подождите секунду. Нет? Будет? Потому что... Подождите секундочку, потому что у нас многие слушатели слушают Тома на английском, и у нас сейчас нет звука. У нас есть только синхрон, а его слушаю только я. Так, Том рассказал, что в целом дела у него неплохо. И он пишет, и даже много написал. И с учетом того, что творится в мире, он еще нормально себя чувствует. Мы тоже неплохо, Том. Как у вас, спрашивает он. Теперь синхронист ему об этом рассказывает. Видимо, нам нужно завершать, да? Вот так вот, в таком странном состоянии мы, видимо, будем сейчас прощаться. Том, спасибо вам большое. Так, есть связь? Человек у меня в ухе тоже пропал. Ну, наверное, значит... Ой. Алло? О! Кажется, Том говорит, что будет какой-то new fiction. Хорошо, но мы тогда прощаемся с Томом. К сожалению, у нас технические неполадки, но, к счастью, они были только в последние минуты. Спасибо большое всем, кто был с нами. Том Поллок, издательство «Поляндрия», Ольга Лишина. Спасибо Тому. И мы очень надеемся, что однажды все это закончится, и он приедет к нам, и мы поговорим без масок и без дополнительных приспособлений. Но он видит нас. Bye-bye. Nice to meet you, Том. Спасибо. Спасибо большое, друзья. Ну,